Hello and welcome to the Pre-Chiro podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection out in Canada with Tom Preston. Tom, can you kind of introduce yourself and reflect on what it was that attracted you to become a chiropractor? Maybe a little bit about your background, a little bit about that time of life, and what it was that pulled you to chiropractic or maybe pushed you?
Yeah, great question. Well, my comment then is always I was in a Parker seminar. You might remember Jim Parker, the great Jim Parker. I was in a seminar, 7,777 of our colleagues, and Jim Parker made this comment in the midst of his Friday thing, and he goes, "Do you think chiropractic? Do you think you chose chiropractic, or do you think chiropractic chose you?" And it was like I got goosebumps then, like I do now, and it's like, yeah, you know what? I think chiropractic chose me. So how I got interested in chiropractic was I was somewhat of an athlete, let's do not Olympic level, but somewhat of an athlete. But I was always a big kid. So I usually played up a level in hockey and stuff. So I played with kids older than me because I was the same size as them, but I also got banged around a fair bit, right? And so my dad at the time in Canada, chiropractic wasn't a particularly well understood or recognized, profession back in the 1960s when I was a kid. But my dad would take me to the chiropractor and I'd get kind of patched up and put back in the game. Now, didn't understand the concept of optimal human performance or wellness or this stuff, but just as far as patch me up. And I remembered that. As a matter of fact, an old school chiro, shout out to long since passed in human form, but Curry Howe, when I was 12, I went in and my whole low back was locked up and I could hardly walk. Literally, my dad carried me into the office and Curry said to me, looked at me, he goes, "It's going to hurt a bit, kid, but get on your side." And he hammered my low back. And then I'm like, oh. And then he flipped me over and hammered me again. And I got up and he says, "Now get up off this table and run out of here." And I'm like, I was terrified. So I get up and geez, not only could I walk, I could run. I think that left an impact then, right? And I have one older brother, one younger sister. And we came from blue collar, working class folks. Nobody went to university. And my dumbass brother went off to university and he got interested in chiropractic because of our family, chiro. And he made a tough decision. He got accepted both into chiropractic and the faculty of medicine, decided to go into medicine. And I thought, that dumb son bitch can go on to university and do things. Maybe I can too. So I opened my mind to possibilities. I got interested. I went with the intentions of getting into chiropractic and I did. So that's kind of the left brain story. Here's the innate story, Ben. The day I graduated, my dad told me another story I'd never heard in my life. Okay. I was a year old and I was super sick. I had some sort of a bug and I'd been sick for a while and I was losing body mass. As a matter of fact, at the point of this story, I'd lost 1/3 of my body mass as a child. Well, that's dangerous. Like I was literally on death's doorstep. As was the custom at the time, we still had an old family country doc who'd, do house calls. And he'd come up and he would like stick me in the ass with a shot of penicillin because it was a bug. And that's how he was going to fight the bug, right? And I wasn't getting better. I was getting worse and worse and worse. So after a week of this and losing 1/3 of my body mass, my dad calls the chiropractor. Very progressive thinking relative to the era, right? And he talked to Curry, and Curry goes, "You got a sick kid? I'm coming to you. You don't try and drive down your sick kid." My dad tells a story, it was usually a 40-minute drive. Took him an hour and a half in a blizzard to come and do a house call. He checks me out, and he goes, "You know what? Everything's been done for this kid, except the only thing nobody has done is no one has adjusted him." And so as my dad tells the story, my mom held me in his arms. Curry adjusted my atlas. My dad said it sounded like a high-powered rifle went off. And literally within 30 to 60 seconds, I fell asleep and I hadn't slept in 3 days. I slept 24 hours around the clock. My mom actually went in to see if I was dead. She thought the chiropractor had killed me. And I slept 24 hours, woke up. I drank 5 bottles of formula, ate 3 bottles of Pablo, went back to bed for, I think it was 18 hours, woke up, new man. So it's like, did I choose chiropractic or did chiropractic choose me? I think chiropractic chose me I get goosebumps just telling the story, Ben, right? Because I think I was destined, ordained, if you will, to become a chiropractor. And that 1-year-old, I swear that Curry Howe, it might have saved my life. At the very least, radically changed the direction of my life. Because as the research shows, kids with upper cervical subluxations get all kinds of ear infections and they're sick a lot and they get allergies and all kinds of other things. And so I had none of that as a child growing up because of that chiropractic adjustment. And because that chiropractor cared enough to make a house call in a blizzard on a Saturday for, at that time, Ben, he made the astounding sum of $3 for that house call. right? You want to talk about commitment? I think about Doc Curry Howe, and I think about commitment, and it inspires me to be better. That's how I got chosen to be a chiropractor, Ben.
You differentiated between the left brain story and the innate story, and so much of the process to become a chiropractor is the left brain intellectual, jumping through all the hoops of passing your classes and blah, blah, all that stuff. And yet, I recently saw a video of yours talk about moving from a head-based to a heart-based practice. And can you kind of just reflect on maybe your own personal story of how you went through school, or even how you approached chiropractic school as a pre-chiro student? Was it mostly from an intellectual process, or was it more from an innate style, following your heart?
Yeah, no, for me, then at that era of my life, it was definitely a lot more left brain, right? And that was probably a byproduct of I went to the University of Toronto up here in Canada, and just the mindset of the people that were training me, and then I went off to the one of the most left brain chiropractic institutions on the planet in Toronto, and was sort of trained in that sort of a model. And so, really the inklings of the first starts to me then of going to more of an innate based practice was when I was early in practice. And her name was Shirley Coombs. God bless her. Remember her, clear as bell. This was over 30 years ago. And Shirley said to me, and this, I'm months into practice, and she says, Doc, I just have a question. I said, what's that? She goes, is there anything you're doing that could be affecting, my acid reflux that I've had like for 25 years? And I'm like, oh my God, that's not a neuromusculoskeletal thing. That's an autonomic thing. And, there's a Kale Sato's research out of Japan that talks about that. But, that's what those subluxation based people talk about, right? And so I felt nervous and I talked. So I rambled and I said, well, did you change your diet? Did you stress index? So I rambled because I didn't have the basis, and because of the institution I was taught at. And at the end of it, she goes, Doc, I don't even understand 1/10 of what you just said, but I can tell you that the only thing different in my life since I started with this acid reflux years ago, she goes, I've been taking a medication called Tagamet for 14 years. And my husband noticed the other day that I haven't taken it in over 4 weeks, and I've had zero acid reflux. And she said, the only thing different in my life is you and chiropractic. So is it okay with you? Do you mind if I keep coming for the rest of my life? I went, yeah, I guess that's okay, because at that point, then I was all about symptoms and left brain. And, well, here was the story. If I helped them get well and no symptoms, I discharged them. If they didn't get well, they quit. Either way, they didn't get the big idea because I didn't have the big idea. And so Shirley made me, at least I was aware enough to go, there's more to what's going on here. And it put me on a journey of self-exploration, going to the innate side, the heart-based side of life and not just practice. I would sit at the feet of great mentors of mine, people like John DeMartini, Guy Riekeman, Jimmy Sigafus, Reggie Gold, and I would listen. And there was something deep in my core that resonated very strongly. And then I told the Jim Parker story that was in that same era. And it was like I expanded the possibilities, and I was open-minded enough to realize that there was a lot more to life and chiropractic and healing than just the left brain. And man, I tell you, I got a myriad of chiropractic stories, man, about miracles that supposedly couldn't happen, but man, it's about the possibility that comes when you, as our great originator of chiropractic said, when you reconnect man the physical with man the spiritual, right? Possibility is open. So yeah, lots of great background there for me, Ben, to go make that journey from the head to the heart.
There's probably so much that if I was a pre-chiro student and I just listened to you talk for the last 9 minutes, that I'm surprised to hear that chiropractic is or can be. And I'm just curious. Well, you mentioned Reggie Gold, Jim Sigafus, John DeMartini. John's still alive, but Sigafus and Reggie Gold are gone. Can you just really briefly touch on who those mentors were to you? Because they're not here anymore, and part of the inspiration of this project is to carry the torch for the next generation who doesn't have the ability to connect with those pillars that really had a foundation that they stood on that helped lift everybody else up in the profession. I'm just curious if you could kind of touch on them and then maybe tie it back into how it really translated to your life and practice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would to try and give you the Reader's Digest version of a lot of time with both of those people. Reggie and Jim both, they talked about something bigger than pain, symptoms, and even bigger than just the physical body. Right. And they talked about a philosophy and having a philosophy to base your stuff on. And I'd studied enough science to realize, Ben, right, that, you know what, I mean, in my scientific left brain career, I mean, things like butter have been in favor and out of favor like at least 3 or 4 times. Right. And you get one left brain scientific piece of data that said that, this is what's the right thing to do. And then you'd get another study in another journal that completely conflicted it. And so I realized that basing your view of the world, your view of life and practice and love and stuff on purely empirical left brain data had a ton of limitations. But when I heard men like Reggie and Jim talk about, having a philosophy of life and a purpose, a reason why, and I really researched this stuff, right? And I realized Webster's dictionary defines purpose as the reason something exists or is done. And I went, wow, I have a purpose. I wonder what my purpose is. And I invested a lot of time and energy in self-reflection, reflecting on what my purpose was and is. And my very first purpose statement, Ben, was like a whole page, man. I was just going, and I've literally boiled it down then to 2 words. And those 2 words are to inspire authenticity in who I am and how I show up in the world, but also in other people, which ties to, the big idea, right? To who are we as human beings? It took me into a study of quantum physics and the quantum field and some great teachers in that world, both like at the university level, plus also people like, Joe Dispenza, for example, a chiropractor that's done amazing things, like studying that stuff, right? So yeah, it gave me a sense of purpose, which has carried on into how I raise my children, Ben, and how I live my relationship with my wife for the last 37 years we've been married. All kinds of different ripple effects came from having a purpose and a philosophy that I base all of that on. Empirical data, like science, it has a value, but it also has a limitation. And what I find is a lot of students that I've interacted with in the pre-Chiro level is they get really hung up on that piece of empirical data and think that the scientific method is like the holy grail. No, gang, there's a lot more to life and business and love than just, empirical data. And I would trust and hope that people listening to this podcast, Ben, and others would open their minds to possibilities that are out there. It's like the DE movement in chiropractic, right? It says nothing's bigger than life, right? And it's true, because there's just so much more to who we are as human beings than just, what the empirical data would suggest, the allopathic model, the reductionist type thinking. I remember Reggie telling, the great story about the difference between deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning, right? And starting with a base premise and working your way from that. And that lecture, which I had probably on an old cassette tape back in the day, even before CDs, which probably people listening to this don't even know what the hell a CD is, right? I listened to that over and over and over again until it really helped, influence me. Same Jimmy Sigafus. When I had 2 practices from scratch, I started then because I was too dumb to realize that wasn't a smart thing to do. A 45-minute drive in between the 2. And I used to just listen to cassette tapes of Jim's talks, John DeMartini's talks, Reggie's talks and stuff, until literally some of those, then I could say the next word that was going to be on the cassette because I just had it. But what it did is it helped decondition some conditioned thinking I had about the reductionistic allopathic model that opened me up to the vitalistic possibility, which I then took that scientific method stuff to study quantum physics and realized that the origins of chiropractic, which D.D. Palmer very clearly wrote in his book, the Chiropractor's Adjuster, that chiropractic is based on tone, right? And it's like, man, quantum physics is validating stuff that D.D. Palmer was writing about over 100 years ago. And it's like everything comes full circle then, right? And literally I named my company Full Circle for lots of reasons, but that's one of them. So yeah, those 2 men and some of the other people I mentioned were massively influential in my life.
And I appreciate you giving that recommendation to listen to some of your mentors on the way to school. Like I would listen to those Reggie Gold talks on the way to school. I would listen to the talks that Arno was putting onto CDs on the way to school. And that really, like you said, helped decondition my thinking. It was just really helpful for me. There's so many distractions right now for chiropractic students, just with the way the world is functioning and also with the way that the curriculum is demanding them to not only do in person but online courses. And sometimes they're in class, sometimes they're not in class. I'm just curious if you could give any sort of adaptation strategies to a chiropractic student today, based on your experience of maybe how they should approach the program, how they should really recognize that they have to get through the program to get licensed to practice, but also that there's an entire other world of study, and maybe how you would orient them to studying chiropractic. That could be really helpful if you could maybe give that a go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and as of this recording, and hopefully this will be listened to for a long time, Ben, but as of this recording, one of my 5 daughters, Jayla, is a recent graduate of a chiropractic institution here in Canada. And so I can, speak to how I helped her, approach it. So she's been out just, it'll be about 2 years as of this recording. And I said to her, I said, honey, you know what? Getting your DC degree gives you the right to start to really learn about life and chiropractic and the practice of. But I said, you've got to honor the people that are there, the professors and otherwise, right? And just, take in everything that they're offering, but also put it through a filter. And again, she said to me, hey, Dad, it was, so I kept saying to her, I said, honey, you know what? We got to keep you connected to your purpose and to your philosophy, right? And because, one of my dear friends' sons in chiropractic went to that same institution. And he told me after he graduated, he goes, you know what, Tom? They almost beat it out of me with all of their left-brain empirical allopathic data. So I said, honey, we got to keep you, focused on your philosophy and the big picture. And then filter all of the learnings and teachings and stuff, through that filter. So as she's in first year, Ben, right, she'd come home at the times and I'd go, how's it going, honey? Should we talk philosophy? Should we get a green book open? Should we, try and put what you're learning into context? And she's like, Dad, just chill out. Finally, by the middle of second year, Ben, she grabbed me by the shoulders when I was having one of these conversations with her. She goes, Dad, it's in my DNA. Just relax. It's all good, right? So and what I encouraged her to do, Ben, was to literally not stay microcosmed into the culture of just that institution, but literally spread your wings and think outside of the box, right? And expose yourself to other thoughts, other ideas. So podcasts, of course, was not a thing when I was going to school then, or maybe not even you, but certainly, this generation is. And so listening to podcasts like yours, for example, will help to ground in and do things. Of course, assuming that the pandemic settles down, then as of this recording, that, people can actually get in person. I also recommended to her to, to get to where chiropractors gather and just listen and soak it in, right? Shadow docs, go to their offices, ask permission. I find most docs are unbelievably generous with their time and are opening their, the doors of their practice to people to just come and observe and just check and see how it's done and open their eyes and their hearts to other thinking and other ways of doing things. Many times those same docs will buy you a free lunch, you guys, too. So that, that always is a little perk, right? So yeah, so my observation, you guys, is to open your mind to the spectrum of chiropractic, not just, one particular path in it. And the way to do that is to expose yourself to other thinkers, other influencers, and other things, which, by the way, a lot of those people don't always exist on social media, students, right? So limiting your exposure to traditional social media could also be a wise strategy, because you can just cloud your brain, Ben, right? So hopefully there's a couple of gems in there for students listening.
No, definitely. Can you talk about maybe some of the challenges that you faced right out of school? You had mentioned one story that really shifted your consciousness, but what was like maybe the biggest challenges you faced graduating and starting your own practice, or maybe starting 2 practices? Like, what was that experience like? Maybe unpack what it's like to go out into the real world after school. Obviously, it was a different era, but still, what are some themes that you can maybe touch on that will help give people a idea of what it's like to graduate chiropractic school and move into practice?
Yeah. So again, I would say I was so uninformed / dumb, and I didn't know that I should get good mentoring and support and coaching right off the bat. So that's one thing. And people say to me, Doc, everything's relative, Ben, right? And so, but relative to the success that I've achieved in my life, what's one or two of the reasons why? I would say I've invested a lot of time, energy, and money, like a lot in great mentorship, coaching, guidance, throughout. It's like I say to people all the time, say, you know what, if you want to be warm, are you so arrogant or naive that you think you have to invent fire? Or could someone just teach you how to build a fire? Right? I would rather someone teach me how to build a fire. So my challenge has been when I got out was I didn't have good guidance and mentorship. I certainly didn't get support on the business front at school, as most don't. I don't care what school they go to. And so I was like on a super steep learning curve, like a straight up learning curve. And man, I struggled. I struggled relative to the amount of time I was putting in. Then I was working like 70 hours a week. I was working like 8 to 8, 5 days a week and half day Saturdays. And then on the evenings, I was putting together policies and procedures and thinking and forums and stuff, right? That I could have just had gift wrapped to me from a good mentor and save myself a ton of time, energy, and money, quite frankly, right? So I would highly advocate for people to find a good coach mentor to just shortcut their journey. And I find a lot of the students graduating, Ben, are either arrogant or naive, that they think that everything they ever need to be successful in practice, they learned at chiropractic school. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, gang, after paying for a several $100,000 education, but that has not been my experience. It's not my truth. So do that. That's one piece. And then the other thing, Ben, is ensure that early on you have a very clear vision of what you want it to look like. Right? What kind of practice do you want to have? Is it more towards, the allopathic model, or is it more towards the wellness model? Do you want to specialize in athletes, or do you want to specialize in bellies and babies? Do you want to, or geriatrics, or like, where do you want to position yourself? Create an avatar of your ideal practice member, whatever that is, whether it's a 2-month-old baby or a 90-year-old geriatric, or, some superstar athlete or whatever. And then that will help position your thinking, your policies, your procedures, your marketing. It will help get you there. Because I was so confused then early on, and I had all these areas of practice, right? For a while, I was the sports chiropractor for the local junior A hockey team and stuff, right? And I kind of did that. I had a short period of time, I had a very WSIB focused practice. I had a medical referral practice for a while. 47% of my new practice members came from medical referrals, right? I had all of these different things until I found my niche, which was family wellness care from birth to transition, right? And so I wouldn't say I wasted my time, Ben, for several years kind of floating around trying to find my niche. But had I really had the wisdom or someone to guide me to sit down and ask the right questions to get clear on my vision and what it was I really wanted, I could have got there a lot more directly and a lot faster, and therefore made a bigger difference, with my life. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely some challenges there. The one other thing, you guys, I would offer is make sure that you get supported. Like, again, I talked about coach mentoring, but also I had a superstar chiropractic assistant right out of the gate, right at the one practice. I didn't have one in the other practice for about 6 weeks, but I realized I needed some leverage and I couldn't be all things to all people. One of my sayings in my coaching company then is, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? So anybody that can get through Chiro school is bright, self-reliant, self-actualized, and they can do a lot of things. But just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? So rather than becoming a one-man band, right, I brought on some good people, but that Judy was her name, superstar. And she like the small town that I had my second practice in, she was out talking to people and recruiting, Ben, so that my very first day in practice at the small location, a town of 1,000 people, I had 10 new clients, 10 new patients my first day in practice. That was awesome. I had 85 new patients my first month in practice. Awesome. And yet, as a reason, and so I was growing then, but because of the amount of money I had to borrow and to get started and all of that stuff, and just looking at office expenses, not my personal debts with student loans and stuff, but just office costs. I was even though I had 85 new patients my first month in practice, 58 my second month, legendary stuff. Like, not many people can do that or have that experience. I still lost money, Ben, for the first 9 months of my practice. Right. And a lot of docs don't know their numbers. They don't know how to do a simple profit and loss statement. They don't even know they're going broke. And, but I mean, I at least was aware enough. I knew that. I had a bit of sort of natural business savvy, but I was in it for the long haul. And I knew that things would get better when the fixed expenses stayed fixed and, things grew. So yeah, there's lots of things there, lots of recommendations I can offer for students coming out.
I was going to say, you were on a roll of unpacking the relationship that a coach or mentor has with a client or chiropractor. Can you maybe keep reflecting on the types of relationships that you've developed with chiropractors as their coach or mentor, some of the things that you help them move through, some of the different challenges that chiropractors are having that they actually benefit greatly from working with another person and working as a team to move through some of these internal challenges, or yeah, just maybe keep unpacking that, because I feel like you were touching on so many different topics, and that's really valuable to open up people's minds to all the different aspects of chiropractic practice, and how much work you have to do internally, but also externally to really get it to a place where it's refined and it's authentic and it's, you know, it's aligned.
Yeah, for sure. And you used one of my buzzwords, authentic, then, right? Because, one of my friends, mentors in the spiritual realm, he says this, he goes, God doesn't make any junk, right? So, everybody of the 7 point whatever billion there are of us at this recording, it's like, we're all special and unique, but you got to be able to touch and refine that and know that. Plato was recorded as saying an unexamined life is not worth living. Right. So doing that self-introspection to know yourself, what it is you really love in life, is super important. So I developed then when I started coaching, almost 27 years ago, as of this recording, I kind of backed into it. I didn't have a divination experience or a burning bush or, anything that could happen. I just literally was living my life in my authentic ideal. And some of our colleagues were like, well, that's pretty intriguing. How do you do that? And, literally then I made quality of life a very high priority very early on. I didn't want to be the absent father who didn't see his kids because I was working 70 hours a week. That just wasn't my way of being in the world. And so what I settled in on within the first 3 to 4 years of my practice, Ben, was taking 10 to 12 weeks of holidays a year, working a 25-ish hour work week, and making a really nice 6-figure take-home income. And apparently that's appealing to people because, it's not, that's my definition of success. It doesn't need to be anybody else's, but apparently it's intriguing. And, statistically, a lot of chiros don't take near that many holidays, and that's fine if that's their ideal. But I think a lot of docs do it out of default. They don't realize that there's even a choice. So when people start asking me to help them and support them and coach them, and I come up with a 4-part model that I haven't changed in 27 years because I haven't found a better model, right? So to speak to your question, it's this will answer it, I believe. Those 4 pieces are vision, focus, systems, and team. So your vision is your vision for your life, and not just your business, but your personal life, because the two things need to be married, then, in my opinion, right? Because if, for example, if my highest value is family and I'm working 70 hours a week, I'm not the kind of dad I want to be, or the kind of husband I want to be. And so I would start to resent the business, and I'd have one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake, literally stopping my own development because I was starting to resent something that was taking me away from what I valued, right? As one, example. So getting clarity on your vision based upon your values, getting and connecting with that deeper part of self, that authentic self, will make that easier. The focus are the blocks, the obstacles, to use the chiropractic lexicon, and the subluxations that are interfering with that innate, authentic vision from expressing itself. And there's lots of categories here, Ben. Holy cow. Like, to name a few, like limiting beliefs is really common. Undeveloped skill sets, undeveloped communication pathways, fears, literally just fears, guilt, hurts, emotional traumas. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of to unpack there, but to do the Reader's Digest version, make this succinct, it's a bunch of stuff. And then systems and team, Ben, are what are the systems that are necessary to support your vision? Not my vision or BJ Palmer's vision, but your vision, because those systems need to be customized for that expression. I've coached docs that their dream is to see 50 people a week. I've coached docs their dream is to see 1,500 a week. Well, the systems you need to support a 1,500 week practice is a little different than a 50 a week. And the same as the team, Ben. What's the team that's needed to support the vision? So if anybody listening to this, students or early grads, would just go vision, focus, systems, team, vision, focus, and write that down, and then start to explore what your vision is, what your blocks could be, and what systems and team, it would add a lot of value. But to your point, Ben, right, a lot of people don't realize that it's not just about, again, the left brain stuff that we talked about earlier in this conversation, but it's also about the heart and the essence and stuff, right? And the self-development of who you are as a person and what you bring to the world. And are you courageous enough to share your fears and your growth opportunities and learn from that, right? The classical story in business, of course, chiropractic being a business at its most fundamental level, then it's like you can take a doc who sees 100 visits a week, and you could see and put them into a 300 a week practice. and it'll be 100 a week practice within X numbers of months, right? Similarly, you can put a 300 a week doc into a 100 a week practice, and it'll be a 300 a week practice, because the volume and the success is about consciousness, Ben. It's about what's between your ears and in your heart. And if people would just take that at face value and realize that the mechanism for growth that they need lies within them, and a really good coach mentor, in my opinion, will use the Socratic art of teaching or coaching, which is the art of asking questions, to draw forth from people those answers, rather than dictating or using an autocratic approach, which I don't want to pass judgment, Ben, but I see a lot where somebody else go, hey, I had a successful life in practice, so just copy what I did and you'll be a success too. And my limitation with that, Ben, is that the best I could hope to be if I copied everything they did is a cheap imitation of them instead of an authentic copy of me. And when BJ, wrote The Bigness of the Fellow Within, right, he was talking about that specialness that's inside of us that wants to express itself, wants to be out. So again, I'm not suggesting that, getting some templates and best practices aren't valuable. They certainly are. But to just copy, I personally have a philosophical issue with that, Ben, right? So standing in your own power, recognizing your own greatness, and being courageous enough to express that, man, that's definitely part of the formula for success, in my opinion.
Can you unpack just a little bit more the systems and the team concepts? Because I believe you did a nice deep dive Reader's Digest version for the vision and the focus, but for systems and team, like what does that encompass? What are you referencing when you talk about that?
Yeah, so systems are there's some really fundamental systems in chiropractic, like intake onboarding, for example, which is how you actually go from meeting a human being to seeing if they qualify to become a chiropractic practice member in your office. And I've seen some parts of our profession that go, well, everybody deserves to be under chiropractic care. And I say, I'm not suggesting they don't, but I can't adjust 7.8 billion people. So I can't see everybody on the planet, but I have a certain, avatar of a person I want to work with, and let me just take that niche of people and work with them. And you can deal with some of these other people, right? And so, systems are designed to help. Using intake onboarding as an example of it is a way to help people understand who you are, who you're not. And in my best practice offering, Ben, it's a 4-stage process. And so anyways, we can go deeper into that. Then you've got things like your report of findings, you got your structured table talk, you got your progress reports. So you've got those sort of more doctor-oriented systems, but also, Ben, there's a ton of other systems. There's literally communication systems within the office, what we call front desk, back desk, making sure that your front desk team and you are on the same page. There's team-related systems too, Ben, around meetings and leadership and development plans for your team and the art of delegation. And there's just so much on the team side that could help leverage what you do, because just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? And adding your team onto that. There's pieces around marketing systems, Ben, right? Like writing your avatar, making sure that you have external marketing systems plus internal marketing systems to ensure that you're telling the world that you're available. Most docs are like the best kept secrets in their community, Ben, because they're not courageous enough to go out to tell the world that they have a gift inside of them that they want to share, called the gift of chiropractic, and what that could mean in their lives and stuff, so definitely there's lots of depth to both of those pieces, but hopefully that would give the audience a bit of a taste.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, mainly because my hope is to inspire more pre-Chiro students to start their own pre-Chiro club, which acts as a model for them to gain experience of what it's like to practice leadership and build a team and facilitate meetings and have systems on their campus where they're going out and trying to promote that which they're developing within themselves. It's practice from a communication standpoint, it's practice from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and it's also practice from how do I translate what I've been learning about chiropractic to be relevant to the community and environment that I'm in right now, where there's absolutely no presence of chiropractic. I don't think there's any presence of chiropractic on almost any high school or college campus whatsoever, that I know of in the entire world, which I think is one of the primary subluxations that the profession has. in that we're not developing shared experiences of our incoming students so that there is mutual respect, that people have gone through some of the same types of learning experiences, some of the same types of challenges, that they can be like, okay, you're going to life, I'm going to CMCC, but we both went through this together, so let's keep in touch and share notes or compare notes of what our experiences are like. I'm just curious what you think about how our profession could really transform itself from the inside out if we connect them to coaches and mentors in their pre-Chiro years and keep them connected to coaches and mentors, and then also give students the opportunity to become coaches and mentors themselves for pre-Chiro students, so that they can start to see the value that they already contain within themselves based on the hard work they've done.
Yeah, for sure. So to heal the profession from the inside out, Ben, I think, in my opinion, one of the things that needs to happen is we need to recognize that there will always be contrast and duality in the profession, right? I mean, literally, in my opinion, when Einstein said E equals mc squared, right, that energy and mass or matter are interchangeable the closer you get the speed of light. In my view of beingness, right, we come out of essence or spirit form, slow our vibration down so we can wear these beautiful earth suits and know what it's like to taste chocolate, and know what it's like to give a hug to someone you love, and know what it's like to be disappointed. And so life is a binary. It's a binomial. It's contrast. You understand cold because you know what hot is. You understand dark because you know what light is. And so there will always be contrast and duality in life, right? So in the chiropractic profession, there's duality. There's people that are more allopathic, symptom-oriented, and there's people that are more wellness, optimal human potential-oriented. There will always be both. It's impractical for anybody in the profession to think they're ever going to stamp out the other side. There will always be Republicans and Democrats, right? There will always be male and female, and that's how the universe is designed. So if we can just accept that and then see what we have in common instead of where we're different and focus on that, that would be a start of healing from within. Then the evolution of that then would be more harmony, more conversation, more similarities. And then from that, then we could do things as you suggest. One of the things I'm really beating the drum in our profession right now, Ben, that I personally think has not been well done is succession planning, right? I literally just finished last night, as of this recording, my 12 module program on succession planning, where I got veteran docs, been in practice 25 to 40 years, and help them design and build a succession plan for how they can pass the torch of their tremendous wisdom and experience and knowledge onto a younger DC, possibly a new grad, as part of a succession, right? Because there's the saddest thing I ever hear, Ben, is when a veteran doc just closes up shop and just puts a sign on the door that says, I'm no longer in business. And there's no succession plan. And God bless BJ Palmer, who's a mentor of mine, even though I never physically met him. I don't think BJ did succession well, right? Because his son, Daniel David, changed the face of Palmer, College, as I've read about and studied. And he took the epigrams down. He closed the BJ Palmer Institute. Like, he did a lot of things to change it. So the culture and the essence of what BJ created was not carried on in the same form. And I personally think that is sad. But going back to the succession of everyday docs, Ben, if we could pass that torch and have a structure and a system to pass on that knowledge, that information, that wisdom, that experience, oh my God, Ben, it would be amazing. Because now what these senior docs have created that's so valuable to their communities and makes such a difference can not only outlive their practice career, but could potentially outlive their mortal lives. Right, Ben, right now in business, there's CEOs in Japan, particularly, I seem to read in Japan a lot for whatever reasons, that these CEOs that are putting together hundreds of year business plans. They're saying, we want this company, it's so enmeshed within the culture, in the Japanese culture, that they want to see this vision they have for this company and the good it does in the world to outlive their grandchildren's grandchildren's grandchildren. Damn, that's inspiring to me, Ben, right? If you believe strong enough in your purpose and your mission, why wouldn't you want that to outlive you? Why wouldn't you want to put together a succession plan that allows you to pass the torch to the next generation so that all of that wealth of knowledge and experience and wisdom gets passed on? And now, Ben, we have a vehicle whereby the younger docs coming into practice have a way to plug in. Right? Because even my daughter, Ben, right? God bless her. She's a bright girl and has, chiropractic in her DNA, as she told me. But I recommended to her that she associates when she comes out of school, because she's not ready to own her own business yet. There's just too much to unpack, Ben, in those early years for most docs. maybe you got an MBA before you went into chiro school. God bless you. You're the unicorn. Okay. But for most docs, there's so much about learning to be a good doc once they get their DC degree that I recommend that they associate. But I mean, as if that's part of a longer term succession plan that's well thought out, Ben, that's amazing. But in my experience, Ben, been at this so long in this profession and coaching for so many years, associateships and succession plans are not well planned. They're not well done. And they end in horror and nightmare and heartache and emotional turmoil. And it's one of my waving my chiropractic flag, Ben, to change that in this profession. It's one of the reasons I keep coaching and consulting and putting together succession plans and associate doc recruiting programs and stuff so that we can fix that subluxation profession and give these young people a really solid foundation to grow from, rather than the mismatch of garbage that I see going on out there right now.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, because that's right in alignment with what I'm trying to do with this project, right? We've heard for decades that there's a parallel curriculum that everybody needs to be on in addition to chiropractic school, that, you've got your education, but don't let your education get in the way of really learning chiropractic. And basically what you're talking about is creating opportunities or a platform for older docs, or even docs that have been out for a couple of years and have experience, to share that. That's awesome. That's awesome. You said it's 12 modules of succession planning?
Yeah, it's a 12 module program that I designed that takes you from looking forward to what you want your life to look like, why you want it to look that way, to how you would manage your time in that era of your life. Because so many of us, Ben, it's like when I left active hands-on practice, and I still have a hobby practice, Ben. I see, handfuls of people every week, but that's not a practice in my definition. Technically, I'm still practicing. I still have a license and all the rest. But when I left hands-on practice, Ben, I was so connected to my identity as a chiropractor, man. It was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life, was step out of hands-on. I love hands-on practice, and I'm really good at it. I got a great pair of hands, open heart, keen mind, and I was really good at it. So when I left that, man, I was like, I didn't know who I was or what I was like. I went through a tough time in my life. Thank God I had good mentorship and coaching to help me through that dark time. But the illustration is this, Ben, right? That when you recognize your role and you have a succession plan, you realize that there's a life past practice. And what does that look like? And what are you going to do? And so I get these docs to create their CEO outcomes assessments. What value are you going to bring to the practice when you're not bending over the tables as much as you were, right? How do you do that? What's the team transformation? Financially, what's that look like? Do you want to just sell and leave, or do you want to do a gradual transition, which I'm a bigger fan of, a longer term succession plan where you bring on a superstar associate and then you groom them so they earn the right, I would say that very carefully, and earn the right to become your business junior partner. And then they earn the right to become a senior partner. And then they earn the right to buy you out. And if you choose, maybe you stay on as their associate. And then you'll know how well you treated them when they're your boss, right? So there's all kinds of models, Ben. We find out what it is. We look at the financials behind that, how that changes. There's a lot of pieces of that program, Ben. And then we get into the nuts and bolts of how do you recruit a good associate? How do you sell a practice? How do you appraise a practice? The emotional side of it, the team side of it. There's a lot in that program, Ben.
Wow. High level stuff, high level. Awesome. All right. Well, that's stretched, I believe, the student's mind enough for this conversation. I think that you've touched on over 100 directions that somebody needs to at least acknowledge and appreciate, on this path to becoming a chiropractor. So thank you so much for your time today, Tom.
It's an honor to be here, Ben, and I support your project, your concept, who you are, and what you're bringing, because, I really, in my heart of hearts, Ben, and I'm open-minded enough to have studied a lot of professions and a lot of ologies, if you will, and I really think that the chiropractic holds one of the keys, if not the key, for helping humanity evolve to its next level. BJ talked about this in his writings, but how we could literally help humanity evolve to its next level of what he called root race, to be a more highly conscious, more integrated, more grounded, more whole, more connected being, right? And so, we ain't got near enough chiropractors, Ben, to help influence that. So helping more docs or more young students consider chiropractic, get into pre-chiropractic, get into chiropractic school, get into practice, get some good mentorship all the way through that journey, then it's not just going to be good for chiropractic, it's going to be good for humanity. And I stand behind that 100%, sir. I sometimes am concerned about the world we're going to leave for my grandchildren's grandchildren, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think chiropractic is one of the keys, if not the key, to help that happen the best possible.
Mm-hmm.